Good afternoon, everyone. We are here today to discuss cables in West Africa, and we are going to be exchanging between very prominent experts in the field. We've got people from the legal, from the interconnection, from the cable, and from the mobile operator side, fixed operator as well. So should we go through a round of introduction before? Would you like? So.
Well, my name is Jason Almeida. I'm from CVT. I'm the head of planning and management control. And
Darren Costa, DKIX. Apologize, you have to see me for the second time, but here I am again.
Nadia de Costa Ribeiro. I'm a lawyer from PLMJ, a Portuguese law firm, supposedly expert in telecoms and infrastructure law.
And I'm Vincent Gatineau. I'm representing Elalink. So we do own and operate a submarine cable between Europe and Brazil. Well, we'll talk about it a bit later.
Thank you. I am Zakaria Douyeb, head of business development in Canalink. We also own and operate submarine cables, and we deliver services on submarine cables. Thank you.
Thanks. So the idea today is to dwell on some key shifts, if we can identify those today, on the paradigm of cables and how do they better interconnect West Africa. Okay. So one of the key questions that we want to look at on this panel is the legal framework and how the legal framework is better polishing the agreements between operators. So maybe, Nadia, since you are the legal one here, can you talk of changes in the frameworks that is shaping partnerships today?
If we look at the African continent, I would say that there are still a lot of changes that are required. We have some best practices or good examples that we can take into account. For example, in the CDAO/ECOWAS ecosystem, where we can see a common regulatory approach that actually enables or facilitates agreements for operators and for consortiums to surge and joint ventures that, because there is a common regulatory approach, do not create these entropies, let's say, for operators to agree and have a stable contractual model for the implementation of submarine cables. And so the fact that there is also this regional community that also has laws that are very similar in other domains, like licensing, permitting, also facilitates for the installation and landing of cables. So the ECOWAS, for example, is a very good regulatory model to be taken into consideration if you want to facilitate regional connectivity in the continent. But this has to be followed by other regional communities within Africa, which is not the case. And so we still have some work to do. We could look at these best practices and then draw some lessons to implement in other continental regional communities, like, for example, the SADC community.
Okay. Well, thanks. So you mentioned ECOWAS, regionalism, right? Jason, you recently, you recently have deployed, with the help of Vincent here, Elalink. So my question to you is, with Elalink and already the infrastructure on wax that you guys administrate in Cape Verde, how is the deployment of share extend your strategy as CV Telecom, and in the concept of ECOVAS, has there be some deepening in your trade and opportunities as a strategic telecom operator in West Africa, with share extending it to the continent?
Yes, yes. As you may know, we, CV Telecom, as a company, it's been, well, I would say, 1-2 years that we established our vision to become a regional hub here in our region. Okay, we already have some infrastructure in place. We have, as you say, Link in place. We also have walks, and now we have share that connects Senegal to Cape Verde. Okay, so this all infrastructure make us to see that there is opportunities to be unlocked. Okay, and what are we doing? And we are very keen and engaging with partners in the regions. We have a new approach that it means boots on the ground. You want to go to the place, talk to the people, and we are seeing the deepening of our strategy. We are seeing things are taking place. I would say we are open to business. We're clearly open to business. We are educating our authorities to forests, an open environment where everyone can come here, make business, connect to Africa. And I can say much, but I hope for the next year we will be in place where you will see concrete things that are happening here in Cape Verde. Because we have a very clear vision. We want to be a preferred landing station here in Cape Verde. And we know we want to put our mount where our action must be. Okay? So yes, we are deepening our strategy. We are following a very hands-on approach that we'll be able to deepen our relation with customers, with operators, even at state level with our regional partners.
Thanks. And I know you were there this morning, Mr. Da Costa, but can you tell me when you extend DKIX in Africa, what are the main factors that attracts you as a peering sponsor to go and say, I want to be there? What are the main drives, and what is the experience you can share being here in Cabo Verde and being with CV Telecom in this event?
Yeah, sure. I mean, wherever we go, it has to make sense not only for us, but also for the community. Because at the end of the day, we need to build an interconnection ecosystem which is capable to cope with the demands of this local market, right? Because as you know, an internet exchange point has the mission to retain local traffic local, right? And to avoid what we discussed this morning, sending out packets to Europe and then coming back again, which is not what we want as a community, right? And obviously we do oversee different factors and components of before doing any kind of deployment, such as internet penetration, carrier neutral data centers. That is very important for us. The connectivity, not only in the wet segment, but on the dry segment, because at the end of the day, an internet exchange point needs data centers, right? Multiple at least. We as DKIX globally, we are present in more than 1,000 data centers globally. And the reason why we are present in more than 1,000 data centers is because we want to be closer to the networks. And at the end of the day, the networks will then bring this connectivity back to the end customers, right? And everybody needs to be happy while watching Netflix and so on and so forth. Netflix, Hulu, you name it, all these broadcast videos. And so far, and looking into Africa, we did 2 partnerships in Lagos, Nigeria, with 2 partners. In Congo is with a company with the NGO Internet Portois, which means internet access for everybody. That's what we stand for as well. And obviously, at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that if we are going to a market, we are bringing value into that market and we are not destroying whatever it's already in there, right? So that's our global approach.
Okay, maybe Vincent can you explain, Vincent, what was the main objectives having Link touching base in Cabo Verde Telecom? Were you trying to make a better connected West Africa? And did Elalink serve this purpose so far?
Well, I would say that the core competence of Elalink, since its existence, was to federate either technical interest and financial capabilities, right? So, I mean, Cabo Verde landing has been an instrumental and landing for Elalink since the beginning. CVT has been an anchor customer of the construction of Elalink, along with some others, of course, and some investment we made. And what I believe now, when it is a matter of building a submarine cable for developing territories, so to enable international connectivity, what was you were saying this morning is that you have islands with a certain market, and it makes it sometimes difficult to invest. The objective of a transatlantic like this is to federate this kind of requirements, so to make it possible for everyone. So this is what we've been looking for since the beginning, having this exotic route, because I mean there is not much of cable doing this transatlantic in that direction.
You're the only one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were not the only one in the history, but at the moment we are the only one which has been a high capacity network to do so. And of course, it's opening opportunities for geographies that are not always, I would say, approached by a standard route. And it has been the case for us with Madeira, with Cabo Verde, and we see now some new projects. I mean, after the ready for service of the cable, we've connected Morocco as well, and we have some new projects going on. In particular, now we are building a connection in the other side of the Atlantic to French Guiana, which will allow a direct connectivity from this European territory directly to Europe mainland, right? And we are as well working with Mauritania, so about to start the construction there. So, and hopefully there'll be some others that we have announced last week. We are working as well in Brazil. Again, it's in the other side, but I would say wherever the route is close, you can address it. So we were close. I mean, the geography is not always, what it is. The reality of geographies are sometimes a bit a challenge by some Mercator projections, and the road actually is really coming close to both West Africa and the Caribbean. So this is where we are now expanding.
Thanks. And you talked about financial innovations. Zacharias, I know you are representing Canalink, and what can you share about the investments that Canalink did in terms of deploying the Canalink fiber and extending it to wherever you want to go in Africa?
Thank you. So at the level of Canalink, we made a lot of investment also with the help of the European Commission, the many programs that we have for grants or financing that is for the submarine cables. So we are developing cables between Canary Islands and Spain mainland for the connectivity of the territories. Also, we are now in the moment of deploying cables between many other islands in order to renew the infrastructure, the old infrastructure. So we're renewing that. And also we are connecting, we're making projects to connect with Morocco and other countries in the region. So mainly, apart from our presence in SWACs and our investment in the last segment of to Africa to connect with Lisbon, is all to give redundancy to our traffic locally and also the traffic of our partners in Africa that goes through Canary Islands, and make it protected like three ways. Also, I wanted to add a little comment regarding, for example, the regulation in the region and all. It just sometimes, I mean, we have partners in all over, the continent, especially in the west coast of Africa, and it seems like everyone is aware of the necessity of this infrastructure, that they have to renew, maybe to acquire new infrastructures. But the regulations and investment doesn't goes always the same way as this awareness, because regulations sometimes now we will have to come with new regulations regarding old cables when they come to be decommissioned for the environmental aspect, and the new cables that are going to be deployed in the sense of how to protect this infrastructure with all the cuts that are happening. So our government, by making these regulations, are they ready to make action and make some entities to protect this infrastructure, being aware that a cut in this infrastructure means a blackout for lots of countries in the region. And from the other side, the investment, when thinking about the submarine cable, sometimes also many entities within a country, starting from public to private, also sometimes they miss the idea of what is my need within a submarine cable. Do I need just to go to a determined point? So is it submarine cable from point to point, or am I in a need to cover a region and exchange my traffic with the region? So these are questions to be also took into consideration while making regulations, while making strategies. And this is something that is a discussion that we have open with a lot of our partners in the public and private sector in the region.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So today we've got a couple of people here that have cable systems, and all those cable systems, I think it's fair to say, are financed by banks or financial institutions, right? And I think it's important here to try to make a connection between what is the topic of today, which is the regulation, and the financial means to get a cable up and running. So maybe I can go back to the regulatory framework. Is Nadia, can you shed some lights on how the financial models are being amended to the flexibility or to the needs for them to be easier to lend money? And is there some ideas you can share on how the relationship models have changed with those big money lenders, so to speak?
Well, I think that it's not actually the financial models that are changing, but it's the perspective of the regulator that is changing in order to facilitate the investors from seeing an opportunity in the deployment of these cables. So what we are seeing now is the state from refraining or from abstaining from being the main stakeholder in the deployment of these infrastructures and encouraging private PPP models, so private-public partnership models, and where they are even implementing structures like private companies that are partially owned by the state, but not fully owned by the state, not to discourage investors from putting money into these companies. We are also seeing the states implementing tax or fiscal incentives for the deployment of these cables. Actually, I believe that Cape Verde is a good example for this, where the government is implementing subsidies to the deployment of cable systems. And so this is the way that the government or the state is implementing legislative or regulatory measures to foster private investment. So it's not the private investor adapting, but rather the opposite. It's the state understanding that this is not a monopoly. This is not an infrastructure that should be seen, although it's a very critical infrastructure for the state. They realize we do not have the capacity to invest and maintain this infrastructure. So let us create the right models to foster private and first to attract and then maintain private investment in order for these structures to keep being built and maintain in a sustainable way. I believe this is the case.
Please, Vincent, yeah.
just to jump on that, I mean, what we see in terms of business model as well, what was not, I mean, that an importance at some time and it's changing a lot with, I would say, the latest weeks, is the value of sovereignty in the infrastructure. And we are the main investor today in submarine cables. They are not European. They are, most of them, American. And well, there are some connections that are putting in their hands, and so far you don't know whether we are friends or not. And 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 I would say you need to make sure that you have a 25 or more years of operation in a way that you remain sovereign of your connectivities, right? So what we've seen, so it was already, I would say, a trend. I mean, in the last, I would say, last 2-3 years, that we see more and more public investments. I mean, as part of Elalink different projects to foster the existence of a cable. What was saying Zakaria as well on the granting, we are seeing a lot of programs of grants. I mean, the one we are looking for ourselves as Europeans, coming from the European Commission, so that makes this project exist in order to make sure that we are not jeopardizing potential sovereignty on the way we are operating the cable, and to make them exist a part of, I would say, the major investment you are seeing in the market. So that making a real big twist in the last moments, I would say, of investment.
But Nadia also mentioned, although the governments are, open in a way, open the eyes, the good eyes, to lend more capacity into the countries, we definitely can see that even these new two cables which are landing in Africa, the one from Meta and Keanu from Google, they do have different business models than the ones we are used to it, right? So back in the days, we're used to it that we have a consortium model where everybody had his say depending on how many shares you hold. But we definitely could see that the capacity, again, what I said on the previous session, that it was hard to get the capacity out from the landing station and bring it back into the data center facility, right? Nowadays, it's totally the opposite. It's like if you take a branch unit into your country, you need to be able to grant access to this capacity to whomever has the need to, right? And hopefully this might open also the game for the smaller, medium, and larger companies, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to serve their customers on the same equal way, I would say.
Yeah, that's because, and that's a very, I think, I'm sorry, Darwin, EU, Mr. Da Costa, the original. I think that's inspired in the open access principle that we saw emerge in the EU. So, and because governments are realizing, okay, we do need to have more and more operators accessing the networks, although investment does need to be returned to who built the network. That's something that you could not forget, because sometimes there's, okay, open access, let's go, let's access the network, and then forget who built it in the first place. And that's something that we should not forget and keep out of sight, because there was a cost there. So
Yeah.
But if you go back into the ones who are building those cables, then I don't need to say anything more, right? I mean, the return on investment for someone like Elalink is totally different than the return on investment of someone we just spoke about it.
Exactly.
I mean, they have a need of building those cables. And eventually there will be spare capacity, which can be used for the others, right? It's totally different than your case, for example.
That's why we need to have the different.
Sure.
If you, I mean, just add in a little bit on what was talks about. It is a very interesting topic, very sensitive topic also, because I see that investments in submarine cables, as I said before, it should reflect the strategy of the country. First of things, I think and I believe that in our region, I'm originally Moroccan, so in the region of in all Africa, if it wasn't for the government to take the lead and say, I am interested in developing that, nobody is going to do so. These are huge investments. So the government should give this kind of direction to where they want it to go. This is the first thing. And then the government or the ecosystem generally should decide what do they want to be. Is it an open market or a closed market? Because it is not about bad or good. It's just like the economical model of each country depends on one thing or another. Maybe some countries can make a huge economical balance or from opening the station and opening the market. But other countries are so sensitive that if they open the market or the station, the added value that they create through the operators is going to go out. And in the same time, as Mr. Vincent said, the question of the sovereignty stays always kind of in the air, because it is not the same when you have one cable or two and you open your market. It is very different situation than having 3-4 cables and you open your market, because maybe you are sovereign over 2-3 cables already and you are not threatened by any action that can be happening on other cables. So it is something that should be made pragmatic and not just follow the trends. We should open market. Each country should adopt what is suitable for them and serve their own purposes. This is my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, just a little bit. I would like to make your words mine, because in Cape Verde we are always saying that we want to become a digital hub. This is the vision of the state. But
actually, just on this, can you share what
Yeah.
is the time frame of this digital strategy you want to
well,
implement?
as the government stated, it has the goal to have, I would say, 25% of the economy in the digital sector. That's a bold claim, you know. But more than words, we need to follow with action, okay? And our case, to fund projects that are very with very cost to deploy, that's submarine cables. Man, we would like to have a grant, as Zakaria said, man. And here we are a very small country, a very small company, of course, with a lot of financial constraint. For us, it's a decision to invest in a third cable. Is only possible if we have some public funding. We know we have the country that we have. There's no money for a lot of things. There are other priorities. But if is indeed our vision to become a digital hub, we must come ahead and put our resource to achieve this goal. And this is one of the main constraints, that sometimes we take more time to think decisions, because we need to assess the viability of some decision. And I can speak from my own experience. We already have Link funded by EIB, and we are on a second framework loan with EIB to fund another project, including maybe a third cable. But of course, we need some help. We need because we agree that if we invest with the help of the public funding, we can here create an ecosystem where everybody can have a good returns, because the opportunities, they are there. They need to be unlocked, but we need someone to come ahead and put some resource there.
Thank you. Nadia, you want to add something?
Just to add, of course, that the state can take the initiative of saying, if no one does it, I'll have to go first. But as I mentioned before, this can be done under the public-private partnership. And the best model, for example, and that's something that I'm studying for another country, would be under the BOT, for example, contracts, where you have, and the reason why you have the European Commission.
So Nadia, what is the BOT country?
Build, operate, and transfer.
Okay, thank you.
So it's a concession. It's a type of concession agreement where you have the state basically undertaking all the legal and more circumstantial risks, and the operator basically undertakes the more economic risks of their
Operations.
concession and operational. And so this has been for the telecoms contracts or concessions in the last years, has been proven like the best model under public-private partnerships and concession agreements. Where and why you have the EIB and the World Bank and the EU funding these projects is because one of the assumption is open access networks, or else you wouldn't have them funding it. So
Thanks for this underlining.
yeah, so that's why, and the principle is always this one.
Okay, so one very interesting thing is has been a parallel to the CDN-driven cables. We both have heard, well, we all have heard of To Africa and Ekiano. And today, in this conference, we're not talking about CDN really as a main driver of the economy, more as a means to connect them better to the population, right? So we've got really in this panel 3 different systems in a way. Well, actually, we've got Canalink, we've got Elalink, and we've got also Share in a way as a kind of sovereign cable from Cabo Verde. My question to you is there, because of the more flexibility granted by the ownership of your project, is there a need as well to explore more risky but more rewarding partnership with other operators in the ecosystem in order to attract what is the open access standing for, which is hosting the digital economy, which is the servers at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yes, of course. As I think I said before, we are extremely engaged in conversation with partners here in the region. We know there is a risk, but of course, where is risk, that might have more rentability, more ROI to deliver to the shareholders. So we, as a country and company, also
Sorry, please speak up. Please.
Sorry. As a company, we are fully engaged to have open markets, open access, where everyone can come and make business, not be discriminated against, where there is a very transparent framework. Okay, and this is our vision, and this is what we are advocating together with our national authorities. So, and we are, as I'm speak, we have some delegations in West African countries that are trying to do exactly what I'm saying. So there is risk. We are aware of those risks, but we want to go there, speak to the people, make them come from here to Cape Verde to establish their service, to have service, and who knows, in the future we can become I think we can do so, become in terms of a regional hub with some importance and some service and traffic.
Yeah, but
just
that one, yeah.
I mentioned with DKIX being, in data centers where neutrality is the key, right? Because at the end of the day, when all of these components, they come together, you have good terrestrial connectivity, you have a good country strategy, like Zachariah mentioned, whatever you want to be, whether you want to be a hub or not, But for us, it makes all the sense because the business will start and will end within the data center. And we see that a lot across the world, wherever we go. We just announced we are going to Doha. We just announced we are going to Brazil, and as more the market is open, business will be there. And obviously, I'm not saying to open your market if you don't want to, but eventually I was working back then for my own country, and I still can remember we were screaming, we're going to be the next big hub in the Western Africa. And you know who the hub is now? Ghana is the hub. You know why? Because they execute,
So
like you said.
which country?
I can tell you. You know what? I can tell you where I was born. I'm joking. No, Ghana. If you look into Ghana now, right? Ghana is a very good example, and I like Ghana. Why do I like Ghana? Because once you lend your capacity or you implement your POP or whatever in the CLS, or you don't even have to have a POP, but you ask dark fiber. Is there dark fiber available? Can I have dark fiber and just take it back to the mainland where I have my POP? They will tell you, yes, take it. This is the price, it's an affordable price. So you can build your business on top of that and you can do your business, right? That's what I mean. And at the end of the day, and if we, George is not here anymore, but if we can take Portugal as an example, I give you an example of Portugal. Portugal used to be a reference for a subsea hub, but all the traffic went to the flaps. All the data traffic, mainly out of Africa, they went to London or to Germany or to Amsterdam, you name it. And then even Madrid came. Madrid even came back into
And
the
Barcelona
corner.
now.
And Barcelona now, right? And Portugal was like a corridor. But the government, again, going back to what Zachariah said, realized, hey, listen, traffic is passing by. We have so many cables, but nothing is stopping here. So we need a strategy in there. And back in 2019, we as DKIX, we went to Portugal because we believe the country had one a strategic place, right? Geographically speaking, too many cables landing in there. Ella Leaking connected Lisbon to Brazil, not the first in the history, but a very important one in the history as well. And eventually, Portugal now is building what Portugal was not building before, which is just containing and maintaining the traffic from Portuguese people into the country. And I can tell you by heart, Portugal has three incumbent networks. And one of them, they decided, you know what? Hey, we go back to DKIX and we send our traffic, our routes publicly to everybody. You know what happened? Everybody's happy because everybody can watch the news without any of buffering on the internet. Everybody can watch Benfica against Porto. Obviously, Porto winning the game at the end without any buffering. But but at the end of the day, what I mean to say is just that they are now creating something that they could have done before. Obviously, it's never late. But again, going back to Zakaria, it's really what the country wants and the government wants for the country, right?
Thanks. I think the point of open access is clear. Now, whether West Africa is ready or not, I think that's another question, right? Zakaria, can you identify in what measure the Canary Islands, for instance, can be a meeting point, since actually the first port of call of Europe from an African standpoint is the Canary Islands. So can you explain, following the evolution of Portugal being actually the place to be on a common understanding, how the Canary Islands is repositioning itself in the map with Canalink?
Thank you. Well, the positioning of Canary Islands and Canalink in that matter in the map is naturally, geographically we're African, but politically we are European. So we have advantage of both of the worlds. Lisbon and Portugal, they're positioning themselves as the end side of submarine cables. But in Canary Islands, in this kind of ecosystems, we are more adopting strategies like Cabo Verde, for example, a strategy, or other countries in the region, which is, first of all, the regulations doesn't, it allows you, the Spanish regulation allows you to land the submarine cable whenever you want and whoever you want. On whoever you are. You don't have to be an operator in Spain to land the submarine cable. It's easy, so it is open for everyone. Second of all, due to the large trajectory that the submarine cables make between South Africa until London or Portugal or Paris or any place in Europe, it is always convenient to make a landing in case you will have to restore the traffic in case of cuts or anything. So in Canary Islands, we have a lot of small cables between islands that are connecting the major cables that are passing internationally and so that we can switch traffic between any one of these cables under demand. If there is a cut in a cable, we can switch traffic and then inject it in the other cable, and that way we can remediate a little bit with the risks of cuts in submarine cables. Also, we are working on renewables. So the ecosystem altogether now in telecom, submarine cables, data centers, and energy each time are coming together closer. So Canary Islands also offers this kind of infrastructure that is already there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing that I wanted to look at is how, looking at the comparison of what you presented, the CDN-driven cable strategy versus the sovereign local, let's say, ownership of cable initiatives. What is your response to the CDN cables in West Africa? Do you have a solid strategy? And does this strategy is aligned with other members of the market as competitors? Is there a strategy actually to bring the CDNs to your local markets, and how are you following it basically? So it's to
Yes. Thank you.
to the
Thank you.
members.
I've been holding the mic, so I'm going to be like, yeah, I think that it's just a question of understanding what we are doing at the level of each country or ecosystem. Because when we're talking about these kind of cables, like Google or Facebook or Microsoft's cables, many times within our countries, we think that it is always to chase the added value. Where is it going? Is it staying? Is it leaving? Because the operators in our countries who have a license, they feel entitled to manage these services and to keep the value added, the added value that is created based on these services that maybe through a cable like Facebook or Google are going to be now redirected to other kind of beneficiary. So it is only a matter to clarify what is my job as a local operator, mobile operator, or fixed operator. Where is my added value is located, and if this business model is affecting me, and if it is, then find a way to mitigate between all partners, and just make a sustainable model for this kind of businesses.
Thanks. And you, Jason.
I would let me rephrase that. We want to work with CDN, but sometimes it's very difficult for us to speak with the CDM. We are an emerging hub, and not.
Why is that? Would you like them to come to the
Yes.
region? Do you think there's a lack of representation from them?
Yes,
in West Africa?
In our case, the lack of knowing the country itself, you must, I would say, we must first make ourselves known. So that's interest on us, okay? Because a lot of time we want to work with Google, with Facebook, but it's very difficult for us to reach them, to make them see that there is opportunity. There is a country, okay, we are a small country, but that with our position, with our legal framework that is very close to Europe, our laws, our position as a neutral market, I would say they don't believe at the first, but of course we know that this is a process. As we go gaining dimensions with more cables, things can change, okay? But this is, of course, a path that we are, as country, as company, we must make to bring them here in the country. But we want to work with the hyperscalers, with Google, with Facebook. We want them to come here, establish in Cape Verde. And I think that even in the part of the government, they see very clear that it's possible. We as a country, we are a very sunny country, a very windy country. We can't bring cost of energy with very competitive price that can foster this environment. So we are investing in submarine cables. The government is investing in energy, and we of course we want to invest in data center. We have a 1.5 megawatt watt data center that's in the process of in the investment. Right? We are refurbish the data center, and we have plans to go ahead with new data centers. So we are open to work with these hyperscalers, with these cables from CDNs, but I think we first must make ourselves known to the world, and I think with that backdrop, things can start to go on our way.
Thanks. I have a question for, Darwin. I was thinking of something. You said open access. You said that it's very important for operators to really open the network. But when you are looking at an economy or an ecosystem where actually every operators consolidate their assets in such a way that they're offering to the market a service that is not so much dependent on other partners, but on what they've established. Do you still think that open access is the right message to convey when there's a strong fear of lack of return of investments from the operators that are actually deploying the digital infrastructure in that designated geography?
I didn't say they should open the networks. Okay. The internet is a network of networks. If you go back in history, each network has an assigned number, right? This number is called autonomous system numbers, which means to say the first wording is autonomous, right? So then we go back to Zakaria, which means to say you are entitled to do whatever you want to do with your network. It's your network, right? Let's start by there. Secondly, to answer your question, it goes really back into what the country strategy is. And I've been, just like you, in many countries in Africa. We want, now is the digital transformation. Let's do it. We're going to do it. Let's do it. And then after 10 years, you're still talking about the digital transformation. But if you could measure, because you need to measure things, right? If you build a car, if the Germans build a BMW, then everybody needs to measure whether the BMW has quality or not quality, right? That's how you're going to measure if you pay something. And then we go back to that, and I really think, I think the numbers from Elizabeth this morning were very promising if we look into the young generation we have living in Africa. And eventually, if they never have access to the internet like we have in Europe, fortunately us, right? Our children, they do have internet access to the internet. I'm not talking about access like 100 megs. No, I'm talking about networks in Europe nowadays. They deliver at your home 1 gigabit fiber into your home. And you don't need that. You don't need it, but they will give it to you. So it means to say, going back again, really that, I think it's, again, the public and private, we need to walk hand in hand and very aligned, and more than just walking. It's really to streamline, okay, what do we need to do as a country, right? South Africa has had it very clearly from the beginning. And if you ask me, or if I ask you, Dylan, you want to open an internet service provider, right? You want to build your own backbone. The first thing that will come into your mind is, oh, I need to be present in South Africa, Lagos, and Kenya. And why is that? Because eventually your product will have quality because you're going to connect into the different stakeholders where you need to be connected to, right?
Certainly, yeah. No, I think it's very key that you can identify or measure as a KPI the level of internet penetration with the level of cross connections between autonomous system in a given country. I think that is a given, and it's true when we go to Lagos or Kenya or South Africa, the numbers of cross connects are in the thousands, and I think from a talking as an Afrix, let's say, observant, I've seen that the more cross-connect there is between countries or within a country, the more the economy is a successful economy. at least on the digital landscape. So maybe then let's go back to this single, let's say, observation. Jason and Zacharias, do you think you have a goal to have the players, whether domestic within your own, let's say, geographical sovereignty, and with regional players that you work with hand in hand, whether via Elalink, via Canalink, via ACE, via WAX, via SAT3. Is there a key objective, a key common denominator to say, we need to achieve that amount of cross-connect? What is the obstacles to do it? Are you questioning that in order to have a common understanding that West Africa needs to be more open connected to the CDNs, to the wider regions that are in Africa, and to Europe?
Yes, I acknowledge that need, but I would say here in Cape Verde, I wouldn't say that we have a goal to have X interconnection, but who knows? I think that things can go in some way that we here in Cape Verde can have 100 interconnection, but to answer your question, yeah, we don't have a clear goal to the numbers of interconnection here in Cape Verde.
Okay. Nadia, I was thinking, is there when money is being lended to deploy an infrastructure, is there a shift in the terms and conditions of the lenders about imposing some roadmaps to actually make digitally more inclusive the projects that they are financing?
Definitely. So you can see that, for example, there are milestones that have to be achieved in terms of coverage. When you talk about cable systems, the conditions are a little bit different, but probably you could say that you have to have X operators passing traffic through your system. You need, if you are also operating the CLS, you need to have X amount of operators accessing the CLS. You need to, your prices cannot exceed, I don't know, certain value, because the idea is to end or to put an end to any type of monopoly that you may have in that market. And that's why there's a decision to finance this type of investment. And so, of course, that there must be trade-offs for this investment. That's similar to, because the model is not new. It's what you've seen with the financing FTTH networks. It's what we see when you have governments financing, I don't know, OPGW networks as well, when using utilities to expand coverage or coverage in rural or underserved areas. So the principle is always the same, or the principles are always the same when you lend money for the deployment of these infrastructures.
Some social economic impacts to be managed.
Yeah.
Not doing it for fun. Right?
So today, Elalink lands in Brazil, in Europe, and in here.
Yeah.
What are what have been the reasons why until now you haven't connected some West African countries that needs capacity? Like, for instance, we know one that has still not connected, which is Bissau. How come it wasn't possible to
No, it's no pain. I would say first, at the moment you're building your cable, when you're building a cable, you need to think about what could be the branches, because when you are building a cable, you put wet plant equipment, which are branching units, And if you don't have a branching unit in front of certain territories, there will be no branch because you're not coming back, cut the cable and put the equipment. So these are done at the very beginning of the ideation of the system. So initially, Link was, I would say, a 3 fiber pair cable with no branching units. And in the first months of, I would say, the deployment, we said we should put a bit more, and in particular, we put like up to 7 branching units in the system. So once you have this equipment, you can address the territories. So I mean, there is no branching unit for Bissau, so we cannot address it.
Okay.
Basically, that's easy.
Right.
Yes. Well, and first there is, I mean, and then there are some other initiatives, so share Amilcar Cabral that actually could be joining indirectly via Cabo Verde. So back to branching units. At this moment, for example, we are building the French Guiana cable, so it's a bit far from here, but still the idea is there. And it's a 2,000 kilometer cable from the trunk. So we had this branching unit for a long time, and now we are connecting it. But as we are passing in front of several big cities in Brazil, what we are doing is finding a way to put 3 more branching units to address 3 more big cities or northern Brazil states, so that at least once I would say the funding will be in place and etc. We will be able to build something. So we are working at this at this very moment, because after it's too late, basically. So whoever is having a cable passing by its territory should be in touch quickly with the people taking care of the cable, so that maybe they put a branching unit, right?
Zacharias, in terms of Canalink, did you position or strategically expanded your branching units to make sure to cater for the growth of the future? How are you responding to, for example, new projects that means that Canalink needs to expand itself?
Yeah, that's the direct response is yes. We included that in our plans to include other countries. But there is the long answer, which is in submarine cables, when you deploy something and you are including other countries, other companies, it is like a marriage. It's a 25 years, of relationship. If you are not sure that this is going to be sustainable, it is very difficult to really include any party in the submarine cable, because even if they are ready with the capex, you are not sure about the opex, you are not sure about the role from the other side. So it is something to be taken into consideration. And especially, for example, in the case of Elalink, they projected and they put a lot of other branching units in facing some territories. The problem is that many territories, they come late to decide that they need the submarine cable. They don't anticipate. And this is the problem. We always find ourselves in some regions building to satisfy what is needed, not what is going to be needed. And that's why, as Mr. Da Costa said, in Europe, they provide you with 1 gigabyte service to your home. It is not because it is, they don't have nothing to do with this capacity, but because the capacity was already provisioned, knowing that in the near or middle future it's going to be needed. So that's why today you need in your home maybe 100 megabyte, and you have access to 1 gigabyte, but you are going to get there. And once you are going to saturate the 1 gigabyte, pretty sure that you are going to have maybe 10 gigabyte to your place, because it is preventing, not correcting after already having. So yeah, that was the long answer. The short answer, we always put a branching unit to some countries that we consider that are ready to join, and we negotiate with them and we start discussions. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Okay. So we tried to touch upon some topics. I think the main cable project of CDN driven initiatives versus the sovereign national, let's say, endeavors, such as the one of Canalink and the ones of Cabo Verde. Is there some questions you would like to raise to the panelists from a public level? Do you have some questions, guys, you would like to ask?
Thank you, guys. Good afternoon once again. From the topic, I think that from my understanding, we didn't deep dive into the future digital requirements of the cables. Okay, I think I would like to hear a little bit about it. We know the new submarine cable from the Facebook. The second one, that is the intention is basically to have capacity data center to support the artificial intelligence. Okay, so I would like to hear from you. And I know that the submarine cables, they basically are old technology, but what is happening right now? What kind of change do we have in terms of submarine cables? That is what I'm expecting to get here as well. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Can I? Yes. Well, now the developments of the submarine cables, of course, now it's following a trend of digital developments, as you said before, and you mentioned like the artificial intelligence and data farming and all of that. It is not only now oriented just for the specific purpose of delivering service to the last customer at home or on their mobile. So there is now other functions, and for that, many submarine cable projects are following this trend, and it goes also geographically, as I said before, because there are some territories that attract this kind of submarine cables because they attract this kind of investment, and the submarine cable in that case many times is the lowest investment within the package because maybe the land, the data centers, the energy are more expensive to develop than the submarine cable. So the submarine cable in that case are serving other purposes beside of the purpose of course, delivering connectivity to the person or to the person in the street.
Maybe I can add a new usage or new features on submarine cables. I mean, it's really trendy to put artificial intelligence a bit of everywhere, right? I mean, it looks, we look intelligent or artificially intelligent, maybe.
We try. I don't know if we look.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, there is no, I mean, the submarine cable is a highway where you go to a supermarket, right? And the artificial intelligence is where you have the supermarket. So you don't have it inside the cable. This, I mean, this said, I would say the impact is where the cable are going, and the cable are going where you have huge data centers, where you have a lot of power available at an affordable prices. This is the impact at the moment to put bigger pipes with some new location where you have power. This said, there are some vendors that are proposing some, I mean, they are putting a label of artificial intelligence on some features. Well, we'll see what it is about, right? But apart from that, I think one of the very interesting trend in submarine cable and as well on the people that are lending money for submarine cables, they want the submarine cable to do what it has to be done, right? So connectivity from a point A to a point B. But now they are seeing as well the investment as a way to add some, in particular, sensors. We are talking a lot about smart cables, and there's a lot of financial institutions that are ready to support these investments to have in the cable some new features capable of getting some data from the seabed, like temperatures and seismic and like sonic stuff, which are first, I mean, there is a research for scientific to, for example, monitor climate change there. There could be some security purpose as well to secure cables. There could be some concern about seismic, let's say early alert systems over there. So this is something which is pretty new, which is coming up. It's still pretty expensive, I must say. That was not there when we built Elalink, and there are several kinds of technologies there, and we really are into it. First, because our customers are looking for at that, so that we include in our new system some features like that. And secondly, because I mean, we believe that it's our support to, I would say, the global community, so that if we can do a bit more with the same infrastructure, to give back to let's say scientific communities with data sets and etc., so that they can improve research on sometime climate change, but sometime I even heard that they could now look for, I mean, follow up lobsters movement close to cable. I mean, it sounds funny, but at the end they managed to do some calculation in the what were the population, how was they were moving, etc. So there's a lot of things that are trendy on that. So far, I would say the business model is not yet super defined because it's for a greater good, and I mean there is no particular economical interest for operators. But I would say that this last 2 years, that was a technical trendy topic.
I can add as well something because we're building Medusa in the Med, and now with the recent shifts that we're seeing in geopolitics, protecting your cable on a physical level, it's actually becoming more and more relevant. And we actually in Barcelona have patented a shield, a casing that is in metal, actually in steel, to around the cable that will actually make it not armor plated, but can sustain the strength of an anchor. Because one thing that we're not discussing in West Africa, because West Africa is maybe a not so interesting region for what's happening between the shift that we're seeing politically. What we're seeing is the cables are a very weak asset. In fact, it's very easy to destroy a cable. You just need to have a fishing boat dragging an anchor, and you can cut several cables. And one of the good things about West Africa is actually the cables that we're discussing today are not cables that are geographically aligned. They actually are very, they're not following the same path, right? So we've got Cabo Verde Telecom that is administrating a couple of cables that are crossing waters that are not really populated by other cables. Then we've got Canalink that is connecting an archipelago that is up to 1,000 kilometers north. And then we've got legacy cables that are following the same trajectory. But what we're not talking about is, are those cables going to be protected to the risk that in other regions we're already seeing today? And I think this is a paradigm of discussions that we're not touching yet. Today we are trying to make the return on investment more accessible from the people putting the cables. And we're talking as well of how ensuring that those cables are touching upon as much populations as it is possible beyond the geographies of the landings. I think this is the discussion of today, and how the legal framework and the financial framework is being following up with this maturity progress. But I think the security of the cable, the survey, all those questions are becoming more and more relevant, and they are not needed yet today because there is no conflict. And I think it's good for West Africa to look at what's happening outside. I don't want to talk too much, but maybe we haven't talked a lot today about what happened in Yemen, what happened in Côte d'Ivoire. Those were unrelated source of incidents. One was a seismic event. The other one was actually a more shady gray hybrid warfare that is being employed by the people that wants to make harm, but want to do it cheaply and nasty. And those new ways of dealings in terms of hurting is something that we can look at from a West African level and say, we don't have that. Are we protecting ourselves from that? But that question won't be relevant for the month or years to come, I reckon. Well, but please, maybe there is protections already being.
Well, I think that there is a need for protections, and here I think that regarding cable systems, it's going to be what happened regarding network security, for example, where you didn't have any network security and you had regulation. You had to impose regulation for certain sectors and industries to become aware of the frailties of the networks. And with cable systems is what we are seeing now. We are seeing, so, okay, this was not, this was overlooked for several years. And now we have, for example, the EU legislating profusely on cyber resilience and cable submarines security, of course, because of the conflicts that we are seeing. But this is also, I would say, an important topic in Africa, because we may not have wars and geopolitical interests that might harm cable systems, but we do have the issues with fishing and the need to delineate the protection zones for submarine cables. There is a question where countries, when certain times of the year the seas do provoke submarine cuts, that can leave a country totally isolated if you do not implement redundancies in time for communications. So, and one of the things and that's even addressed at the level of the African Union, is the need to implement a cyber resilience framework for undersea cables. So, and this is where actually you can see that the law comes first for the technology to then appear in terms of innovation in submarine cables, and that's why we're discussing the need now, the smart metering and smart surveillance, which there are some solutions implemented using AI.
So Nadia, taking your parallel, do you think there's a need now to interconnect archipelagos to archipelagos? For example, do you think it would be crazy to think we're not interconnecting Cabo Verde to the Canary Islands?
Well, if you are talking about redundancy and we need to have alternative routes, I'm not so much invested in the business parts. I do need to look at the figures. Let me look at the figures.
We got time. We've got all the night.
I'm going to take an MBA.
There's no flights to leave anyway. So just yet.
Let me get my commercial team and my financial and my CFO, and I'll talk to you later about that.
Okay. I'll ask the question now. You're not going away. All right. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Is there any other questions that you guys would like to raise? Or maybe it's time for drinks. Yes. Okay. Thank you for your attention, guys. And thank you, people, to bear my questions.